Okay, let's take a look at Shiloh season chapter 7. It's getting intense. Marty and David made the bonehead mistake of going to spy on Judd and almost getting in a lot of trouble. Then we know in chapter 6, Marty decided to go over there and come clean and tell him that it was him spying over there and that didn't really solve anything. It just made Judd really, really mad and makes Judd think it was probably Marty who put that big scratch in his truck. So we'll see what happens here in 7. And we also find out that when Dad went to talk to Judd, it didn't go well. Not only did it not go well, but Dad blew up at Judd too. He got really mad at Judd and he should have. He said he should have left and come back when Judd wasn't drunk so they could talk. But Judd was yelling and carrying on, and Marty's dad lost his temper too and yelled back at Judd and told him to stay off his property and call the sheriff. So things aren't good between Dad and Judd. It's sure quiet around our house. Dad never much held a grudge or carried on a quarrel with a neighbor. It bothers him to do it now. What I don't like is not being able to take Shiloh up to the far meadow to romp and run. We're used to not going up there between Thanksgiving and Christmas when deer season is on, because signs or no signs, hunters sometimes get up in there and they've got rifles. Shot from a shotgun and bullets from a rifle are different things entirely. Shiloh can't understand why we've stopped going up to the meadow. I come home from school and he gets all excited, does his wiggle dance, front end going left and his rear end going right, runs right off toward the path to the meadow, yipping for me to come too, runs back and forth to show me the way, getting to follow. Shiloh, no, I say. He just slinks down low, tail between his legs, like he don't know what he done, but it's bad. And then when I reach down to pet him, he can't make sense of it, I can tell. He's been running around some with a black Labrador, though, and it's nice to see him have a friend of his own. Those two dogs go off together, and sometimes Shiloh's gone all day and half the night, comes back with burrs and ticks, but eager to be off again the next time his friend comes around. At school, I find out more from Michael Schuld about Judd fighting at Ben's Run. Michael says a cousin told him that a friend's uncle had a brother who said Judd owed him some money, and Judd said he didn't. I suppose that by the time a story's passed along to that many people, there's a little added on or a little left out. So I don't know how true it is. But they say Judd had been drinking and took the first swing. Would have half killed each other if the sheriff hadn't shown up. I could imagine that all right, having seen Judd kill two living things now. I could imagine him half killing something without no second thoughts whatsoever. Last week in September, Miss Talbot tells us our school is taking part in a project called Imagine the Future. The idea is to get kids thinking about their lives a little further than what they're going to do over next summer vacation, she says. All 5th and 6th graders in a dozen schools are supposed to choose the job they'd most like to have when they're grown. That's just for starters. Then we've got to write a paper on what it would be like to do that kind of work. Sarah Peterson chooses swimmer. Swimmer? I say when she tells me on the bus. What kind of job is that? Swimming champion, she says. Sarah took swimming lessons last summer at a camp down near Middlebourne. Now she thinks she can go to the Olympics. I asked David Howard what he's going to choose. Biologist, forest ranger, or football player, he says. Haven't decided yet. Didn't take me long to think up mine. Veterinarian. It's all I can think of what it would please me. When I go to Doc Murphy's that Saturday, I tell him what I picked. Only I say I'll probably write down veterinarian technician because it takes a lot of money to go to veterinary school. He's showing me how to use a soaker hose on his bushes, how to keep moving it every 20 minutes. It does take money, and it's real tough to get into veterinary college, Marty, he says, but there's no harm in aiming high. I finish watering all the bushes before I go home. David doesn't come over because he's gone camping with his folks. He's decided to write a report on being a forest ranger, and his dad is taking him to visit a real ranger station so he can ask questions and write a good report. Make it a little bigger. At the supper table, we're talking about Grandma Preston again. Ma called Aunt Hetty over in Clarksburg, and as usual, Grandma Preston was in trouble. "What's she done now?" asked Darrell Lynn, eyes all shiny. Can't wait to hear the latest. Ma starts to tell and then stops. "Darrell Lynn Preston, I don't want this told all over second grade," she warns. "This is family business." "I won't," says Darrell Lynn. "Well," says Ma, and then she looks straight at Dad. "Your mother," she says, "has been stealing." "Stealing?" says Dad. The nurse opened the drawer in Grandma's bedside table and found 5 pairs of eyeglasses. Seems she's been going around from room to room collecting them. Dad gives a loud cough and ducks his head, but you know he's trying to hide a chuckle, and we all laugh then. Can't help ourselves. "She thinks they're hers," Ma continues. "Says the other patients have been stealing from her." "I don't never want to get old," says Darlene. "Well, most old people don't act like that," says Dad. "Grandma Preston lived almost as long, and he was as smart as they come." Grandpa Preston. "Same with Grandma Slater," says Ma, talking about her own Ma. "She hadn't gone out picking beans in the rain and got pneumonia, she'd probably be alive yet." "If she was so smart, how come she was picking beans in the rain?" asked Darlene. I see Dad cover his mouth, but Ma gets a little testy. "All of us do things now and then we shouldn't," she says. "That's the truth," says Dad. It's right about then the phone rings, and because Becky's just slid from her chair, ready to go out and play, she grabs it and answers. "Hi," she says. She's holding the mouthpiece right under her nose. "My grandma?" she begins. "Becky!" yells Darylyn. "Get that phone away from her, Marty," says Ma. I'm already reaching around for it, but Becky's turned her back to me and is facing the wall, her tight little fists closed around that telephone. "Hi," she says again. "What's your name?" And then I hear his voice. "Judd Travers." "You turned that phone over to your daddy," he says. I'm trying to wrestle the phone away from her, and Becky is screeching at the top of her lungs. She stops long enough to ask, "What's your name?" again, and then screeches some more. "You never mind my name." We can hear Judd's voice over the whole kitchen. "Give that phone to your daddy, like I said." Dad's on his feet now. He's removing the fingers of Becky's right hand from the telephone one by one, and I'm removing the fingers of her left. And Becky gives a final squeal, enough to make your ears sing, and goes out on the porch bawling. Screen slams after her. "Hello?" says Dad. The rest of us wait. "Ray Preston, I come home this evening to find my mailbox pushed flat over on the ground. Not a scratch on it, so I know no car backed into it by mistake. I'm saying I think your boy was over here today and knocked over my mailbox. Maybe him and that kid from Friendly." I stare open mouthed at my dad. "What makes you think Marty had anything to do with it?" asks Dad. "Because somebody scratched up my truck a week or two back, and I'm thinking it's Marty who done it. I want him over here tomorrow, digging me a new hole, and I want that post set in cement. If Marty did it, you can be sure I'll have him put it up. But hold on while I talk to him," says Dad. He turns to me. "I didn't do it, Dad. I didn't scratch up his truck neither." "Sure of that, son?" "Yes, I'm sure." "You know who did?" "No." Dad studies me a moment, then puts the phone back to his ear. "He says he didn't do it, Judd." "You believe a kid who come over here hiding on my property, spying on me, and then saying he don't know nothing about my mailbox?" Judd is shouting now. "What's he over here for then? He and that kid from Friendly. You ask him that." "Look, I'll talk to him, Judd. If he did it, we'll both come over and put that box to rights. But I think you've got the wrong boy. It just might be, you know, that since you've knocked down a few boxes of your own lately, the way you've been driving, someone's trying to settle the score. I'm just guessing." "Well, I'm guessing your kid. And until he puts up my box, you got yourself some trouble," says Judd, and he hangs up. Ma and Darylyn are staring first at Dad, then at me. Even Becky stopped her squalling and standing outside the door, nose pressed flat against the screen. Afraid she'll miss something. Marty, let you and me go outside and have a talk, Dad says. Oh boy. Boy, I want this talk about as much as I want poison ivy on the roof of my mouth. But Ma brings Becky in, and we go out and we sit on the porch swing in this cool September night, one square of yellow from the window shining on the floorboards. That true what Judd says, that you and David were over there on his property, spying on him? We were just playing, I say. Even my voice sounds guilty. What did you do? We were crawling along in the grass, making like spies. David wanted to see what Judd does at night. What does he think he does at night? I'm looking down at my hands, rubbing my two thumbnails together. It's so silly, it's embarrassing. I shrug. See if he turns into a werewolf or something? The swing jiggles slightly as Dad half turns and stares at me. Judd was sitting on his steps with a shotgun, and we saw him shoot a squirrel. I go on. When he started to shoot another one, I yelled, "No, don't!" Couldn't help myself. But David pushed my head down, and we stayed hid that way. Judd tried to find us there in the weeds, but he was too drunk. This long, long sigh comes out of my dad, almost like it's got no end to it. He sounds plain tired, worn down. If you tried, you couldn't have picked a worse time to do something like this, he says. And then, Marty, did you have anything to do with Judd's mailbox or scratching up his truck? No, I already told you. But how do I know you're telling the truth? Because you say so? He's looking at me there in the dim light, and I'm remembering how I kept Shiloh's secret from him when the dog first come to me. Thinking how I had told Dad I hadn't seen Judd's dog in our yard when he asked, not mentioning I'd seen it up in our woods, not for one moment letting on that I had him up there. You lied once, you know. I know I lied then, but I'm not lying now. So I've got to decide whether what you're saying now is the truth, says Dad. Neither of us is pushing the swing. I can see Darylyn's shadow just inside the door, standing close as she can get to hear as she can to get to hear what we're saying. What we've got here, Dad goes on, is a man who's drinking heavy, doing things when he's drunk he don't even remember, and getting ready for hunting season. If he hasn't started shooting already. Until I give the word, I don't want you so much as crossing that bridge. I want you as far away from Judd Travers as you can get. I've got enough problems on my hands without you making more. You got that understood? Yes, I tell him. Dad gets up from the swing and starts inside. Dad, I say, and he stops. I didn't mess around with his truck or mailbox. If there's some way to make you believe that, just tell me. Keep out of trouble, Dad says. That's all I ask. Okay, so Dad's not too happy right now, and then what Marty did just makes it worse. So things are just getting worse with Judd, it seems. So we'll have to see what happens in the next chapter.